Over the past few weeks, several people have reached out to me in one way or another, and they've asked questions like, why would a church do a Holocaust remembrance service? Isn't that a Jewish thing? And if we're going to remember the Holocaust, then what about all the other genocides in the world? Bosnia, Rwanda, Cambodia. And given that we have a large population of Armenians in Los Angeles, what about that terrible genocide at the beginning of the 20th century? And of course, these are all very good questions, and they are fair questions. And I wish I had time to address all of them this morning, but briefly, what I want to do is share with you why I think this day, this particular day, is important to our world and also important to our church. It is important because of the scale of the Holocaust, and it's important because of the horrific motivations behind it. The Holocaust will forever be a reminder of our human capacity for evil. This was neither a border war nor a mere skirmish among primitive people. The Nazi regime, galvanized by Adolf Hitler, wanted to address once and for all what he called the Jewish problem. And to address the Jewish problem, Hitler invented what he called the final solution. Jewish persecution, of course, was not new. We know that. But what was new was that Hitler used the technology and the capacity of the industrial age to create an efficient state-run program of eradication. And so death was measured not in the hundreds or even thousands, but in the millions. And the fact that the state created and was running this death machine gave it legitimacy. After all, if the government is doing something, it must be okay, right? No, not always. All of this is a way of saying that history is now measured before the Holocaust and after the Holocaust. It's that monumental. And so for that reason, and that reason alone, we remember and we never forget. The scale of the event is staggering. But there's another reason why we need a Holocaust Remembrance Sunday. And why we especially need a service like this inside our beautiful church. You see, the Holocaust did not happen within a historical void. Something made it possible. And what made it possible was an anti-Jewish ideology that had been grounded in the anti-Jewish theology of the church. I'm not saying the church perpetrated the Holocaust. That was Hitler and the Nazi regime. But what made that possible was a climate of anti-Semitism that had become part of the theological and liturgical and cultural climate of that day. How so? The anti-Jewish theology of the church, for example, suggested that everything associated with Judaism was old, bad, and passé. The Old Testament, the Old Covenant, the Old Dispensation. But with the coming of Jesus, we now have the New Testament, the New Covenant. And to hear some people talk about it, Jesus basically brought a brand new religion to the world. It's the idea that Christianity replaced Judaism as the one true religion of God. The Jews used to be the people of God, but now God has a brand new people, Christian people. And so the Jews have been replaced. It's called supersessionism. Christianity now supersedes Judaism. The problem with this theology is that if the Jews have been replaced, then that means the Jews are expendable. And if the Jews are expendable, and if the Jews killed Jesus, an idea that was the cornerstone of anti-Jewish theology, then we might as as well get rid of the Jews altogether. One step leads to another, to another, to another. Now, you may think this is far-fetched and that no reasonable person would ever think this way. But in fact, people did think this way. And it was the kind of theology that made the unthinkable thinkable during the show. Let me offer a real-life example of how this happened. On May 6th, 1939, just a few years after this building was built, ministers and scholars gathered to establish an organization in Germany. The official title of the organization was this: the Institute for the Study and Eradication of Jewish Influence upon German Church Life. Not much ambiguity in that title, is there? This was founded by a group of pastors and theologians, not Nazi politicians, but people of the church. And their goal was simple. They were trying to completely de-Jewish the Christian faith. They wrote books and liturgical materials, making Christianity a Germanic religion, not Jewish, but Germanic. They argued that Jesus was not a Jew. They proposed that what Jesus was trying to do was not to improve Judaism, as the prophetic tradition has always done in Judaism. No. Jesus had come to bring a brand new religion, a better religion than Judaism. They argued, not surprisingly, that Jesus was killed by the Jews, and that just as Jesus struggled against the Jews of his generation, so now the German church must struggle against the Jews of their generation. Eventually, this led to a significant split in the Protestant church. Some congregations became pro-Nazi. Is that hard to believe? Well, the same question could be asked of churches in America during the Civil War, when some argued for slavery. You'll be happy to know that the congregational churches were on the forefront of the abolitionist movement, arguing for freedom. Many of these German congregations displayed swastikas on the front facade of their church buildings, even above their altars. I'm not making this up. You can see the photographs. You'll be glad to know that some churches went a completely different direction. They resisted this alliance with the Third Reich, and they became known as the Confessing Church. That is to say, they were confessing faith in Jesus Christ and advocating for the dignity of the Jewish people, even in the face of persecution by Hitler. So why is a day like this important? It's important because it's not enough to say never again. We need to understand what happened. We need to understand how it happened. And for those of us who profess the Christian faith in the 20th century, we need to make sure that how we talk about our faith never, ever, ever dehumanizes another human being in the world, especially the household of Israel. The Apostle Paul once said that those of us who are Christians are guests in the house of Israel. And when you are a guest, at least my mother taught me this, you exhibit a little humility and you exhibit a little love, and it always requires our very best behavior. How different the world could be today had the church of another time and place only had realized that one simple insight. And so, friends, I'm so glad that you are here today. I love you all. And today, I would like for you to welcome my very special guest and my dear friend, Miss Renee Firestone, a Holocaust survivor.
Thank you very much for inviting me to commemorate today the 70th anniversary commemoration of the Holocaust, the greatest human tragedy of the humankind, actually. My name is Renee, and I am a Holocaust survivor. I am here today to commemorate our tragedy, but also I must tell you that I am also commemorating and speaking to people of the Armenian, the Armenian genocide, children of the Armenian genocide survivors. I have a very hard time to speak about the Holocaust, especially in the month of April. The month of April will forever be a memory for me for tragedy, loss of my family. I will always remember that April used to be, when I was a child, used to be the greatest, the most wonderful month in the year. I was born in April, on April 13th. And I remember how my father, a few weeks or a few days after the 13th, after they celebrated my birthday at home, I remember how my father sat at the dinner table at Passover. At Passover, when he opened his prayer book, which was called the Haggadah, and in the Haggadah he read how the Jewish people were saved from Egyptian slavery. Little did I know then, I was 20 years old, little did I know that only a few days after, in 1944, after the Passover dinner, I and my family will become slaves to the Nazis. I will never forget that month. A few days after the Seder, we were chased out of our home. We were chased into a cattle car which was packed with 120 people that I was in, with my parents, with my 16-year-old sister. And we traveled 3.5 days, not knowing where we're going. We were lied to. We were told that we're going to Germany because the German people are in trouble. The German army is in trouble, so they need people to harvest, to produce food for them, and work in the factories to produce war machinery because the German army is in great trouble. And we were the only Jewish people at the time that were still at home. Because throughout the years from 1933, when Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, he started his devastation against the Jewish people. And we traveled 3.5 days. Every night the train would stop, and the Nazi soldiers who were escorting our train would start shooting and outside, and we heard screaming, and we didn't know what is going on. And then they were banging on our walls and yelling to us that if we are hiding any money or any valuables, any jewelry, we should give it up. Well, nobody had anything anymore anyway. We traveled with a small suitcase which was allowed to bring with us. On the 4th day, when the train stopped, we were wondering, did we finally arrive to Germany? The cattle cars opened, we jumped off, and I was looking for the fields I'm going to harvest. I saw no fields. I was wondering, where are the factories? I don't see any factories we're going to be working in. So where are we? We had no idea, of course. They chased us out of the cattle cars and were yelling to us that we should leave our suitcases at the railroad station. Everything will be delivered to us. And we should obey orders and follow directions, because now we're going to be taken to a bathhouse where we're going to refresh ourselves, taking a shower, and then we will immediately assigned to our work. Well, still we had no idea where we are. And now I noticed that we are on the outskirts of a village which was surrounded with barbed wires. And in this village I saw rows and rows of wooden barracks as far as the eye could see. Each row of wooden barracks divided with a row of barbed wires. Still, I couldn't imagine what this place was. I thought maybe the Germans are building their villages this way. Of course, how could we imagine what this place was about? Then suddenly I noticed a human skeleton walking in this village in a striped pajama. That striped pajama reminded me of prisoners' uniforms. And I thought to myself, maybe this is some kind of a prison, but what kind of work am I going to do in prison? They didn't tell me I'm going to be working in a prison. I was going to harvest and work in factories. How could I imagine what this place was about? They finally directed us to a bathhouse where they told us to get undressed to take a shower. As soon as we walked into the shower room, the dressing room were right behind us, our clothing was removed, and we, after a 1-minute ice-cold shower, were chased out into a little clearing where Nazi soldiers with vicious dogs met us. The dogs were barking, growling, biting, snapping. We were standing there naked, wet, screaming, wondering, is this the end? Is this where we're going to finish our lives? When suddenly a Nazi officer shows up and picks 1,000 women out of this group and pushes us into a barrack. We're standing in line, 1,000 women. We don't know what's going on in the front. We are hoping that finally they are going to give us a little water or a little food. This has been 4 days without any of that. But when we come closer, we see that they are shaving the heads of the women, their bodies. They spray them with DDT, and then we were handed a used garment which we put on our bodies. No underwear, no shoes, just one single garment. And that's how they drag us into the campsite. It is now midnight. We don't see any people, we don't see any buildings, we have no idea where we are, what is going to happen to us. When our 4 brick chimneys in the 4 corners of the camp, suddenly fire and smoke starts shooting to the skies. The sky becomes red. What's going on here? Where are we? It looks like Lucifer's inferno. This is where we're going to die. This is where we're going to burn to death. And then one prisoner yells, "Don't panic! Look at those chimneys. Those must be the factories we're going to be working in." Now everybody starts talking to each other. Maybe she knows something we don't know. Maybe it's okay. Maybe we will survive. And then another prisoner yells, "Those are not factories. Those are bakeries. Can't you smell anything? It smells like bakeries. Tomorrow morning we're going to get bread." Now everybody starts talking about bread. This is 4 days without food, without water. Now we realize that our group, as we get off the railroad station, are pushing, we don't know where. And daybreak comes. Daybreak comes, and we are still standing there thinking that we're going to be killed here. All of a sudden, a group of women arrived. They were our overseers. We called them capos. The capos carry clubs, like baseball bats. They come over and they start beating us. And they are beating and pushing and shoving and beating. We see some of them dropping to the ground. They can still move, but they are no longer alive. And this is going on all day long. This is the 5th day. We still don't know where we are. Why are they treating us like that? Are they going to kill us here? What's going to happen to us? All of a sudden, my little sister, who was standing next to me, starts crying. And she's begging me, I should find out, when are we going to be reunited with our parents? Who am I going to ask? The prisoners don't know anything. Do I dare approach a overseer, a capo? Of course not. So I'm just looking. Who should I ask? And my sister is crying and asking me. And as I turn around, I notice that during this night, we have been pushed into long lines of columns of 5. Thousands of us standing there in line. And as I'm looking around, one of the prisoners next to me whispers to me, "Can't you see? They lined us up because now they are going to bring the machine gun and they are going to wipe us out." And I think, well, if they are going to kill us anyway, why am I afraid to approach a capo? And I walk over to one of them and very politely ask her, does she know when we're going to be reunited with our parents? and she points to one of the chimneys, and she yells at me, "You don't see the chimney and the fire and the smoke? There go your parents." And I'm wondering, what is she saying? What does it mean, there go my parents? Then she turns back to me and she says, "When you go through those chimneys, you will be reunited." I am going to go through the chimneys? How could I even imagine what she's talking about? How could any human being coming from a normal outside world realize what she's talking about? How could I imagine that humanity could do what they did in this place? When I found out that I'm in a place, not in Germany of course, but in Poland, called Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest extermination camp. I remember when we were dismissed from the line, still not fed, not given water, not having a place to sleep, I decided to look for some of those prisoners in the uniforms who were here before me. And I approached some of them and asked them very politely, do they know what it means I'm going to go through the chimneys? And they look at me like I'm crazy, and they ask me, where do you think you are? And I said, I came to Germany. I came to help out the German soldiers, to give them food or work in the factories. And of course they turn to me and they say, honey, you are not in Germany. You are in Poland, in the largest extermination camp. Extermination camp? Who am I going to exterminate? What am I going to exterminate? How could I imagine that I was brought here to be exterminated? And my parents, and my little sister, and the rest of my family. So here I am 70 years later, and I keep wondering, why me? Why did I escape those chimneys? Why didn't the rest of my family escape? And because I have no idea. I have no idea why I was chosen to live to be 91 years old. I am trying to figure out, how can I justify? What can I do to deserve this? And I have no answer. I have no answer. I only know that as long as I live, I have to tell the story to humanity, because humanity learned absolutely nothing from the Holocaust. If we look around the world today, I personally think that it's in worse shape than it has been before World War II. I remember a year ago when I was taken to Rwanda, to Africa, to interview some survivors of the Rwanda genocide. And I was wondering, when they told me the history of the Rwanda genocide, which lasted 4 months, I was wondering, well, in the Holocaust lasted 12 years. And in the 12 years, we know that 6 million Jews were murdered. In Rwanda, in 4 months, almost a whole million Tutsis were killed. So what did the world learn from the Holocaust? The Holocaust is considered a Jewish event, a Jewish problem. Does the world know that Christian theologians, ministers were killed in Auschwitz? Do they know that Jehovah's Witnesses, the most peaceful people, were murdered in Auschwitz? Do they know that gypsies, who were also considered not human, were murdered in Auschwitz? That's the thing I have to do. I have to let the world know the truth about the Holocaust and the truth about humanity in general. And I must warn humanity. Get to know each other, respect one another, help each other, and survive together. So I thank you for inviting me today on this most memorable day to me. And I hope for a better future for all of us.